Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. My apologies for the delay these past couple of days. I was actually on another little mini trip this past weekend. I went over to Dallas for the Dallas Comic Con. So I'm going to post a lot of those pictures on my Facebook site and may do a video on that soon. I also tried to stop by a location there in Waco, Texas called Cameron Park because there's two reported haunted locations there. I did drive by them actually, but there was going to be no chance for me to even stop by because it was super packed there. I guess I must have picked the very worst day possible of the year to visit because all the parking lots were full in that park. It was just insane with the amount of people. So I'm going to hold it off for another time period so that way I can go and hopefully have it be less full. I don't like going to places where there's way too many people because there's no chance for me to do my ghost hunts in peace. So definitely holding off on that for later on. This is a recent suggestion. It has to do with a haunted home of some sort. The official term is a vicarage located there in Sweden. It's a town called Borgvattnet to be specifically, and this location is considered the most haunted location there in Sweden. So very interesting stuff. It's great because this is the type of perfect location that I look for when I go to my little mini ghost hunts. I try to go visit a place where I could either stay, not necessarily like the whole night, but at least be able to stay for a good time and then do so, let's say, almost in privacy, because in looking at some of these pictures and what you'll see, you'll see a lot of information about this stuff here where it looks like an ordinary home, but on the outside and the inside that's only an appearance only, because at least based on the experiences that people have had for these couple decades, there's definitely something or some things there that continue to haunt people to this day. And you could even stay the night if you wanted to. There's even a certificate, an honorary certificate given to you if you can last the night. So much tantalizing information. So here it goes. So what is this haunted vicarage there in Borgvattnet? Well, it was a house that was built way back when, 1876 to be exact. And I don't know how this place became haunted. There's no known history of it. Like, there's no cemeteries reported nearby. It's not like on a sacred land of some sort. There's no like vortex around it, ley lines, or whatever the case may be. It just became haunted. But the first documented instance of its hauntings, you have to go to 1927. So a couple decades later. Now, were there other hauntings beforehand? There could be, but at least this is the very first documented instance. And you'll notice a pattern, as I mentioned the rest of the instances later on, involving a recurring set of chaplains that seem to have these encounters. The very first one, though, was a chaplain by the name of Niles Headland. He was the first one actually writing down this information. His successor, a guy by the name of Rudolph Tangden, he's the one that reportedly seeing the ghost of a woman in the house. So he also had some strange visitations. Cut to a couple of years later, in the 1940s, yet another chaplain who lived there, someone by the name of Otto Lindgren, and his wife, they experienced more stuff involving what they described as quote-unquote weird sounds and moving objects. And then cut to 1941, and there was a woman who was visiting that location. I don't know if she was actually like just staying for the night or she was actually living there, but the whole thing was she was sleeping in one of the guest rooms, and when she woke up in the dead of night, it was because something had woken her. Like, it's that sense that people get when they suddenly wake up realizing that they're not alone in the room, even though they should be. She was right, because when she looked up, she saw sitting in the sofa in that room three old women just staring back at her, obviously like the apparitions of three old women staring back at her. And she turned on the light to make absolutely certain that she wasn't seeing things, and sure enough, there they were, still there. She described them as being a little bit more blurry, but they were still there, just staring back at her. Crazy stuff. So cut to a couple years later, 1945, yet another chaplain. He was a guy by the name of Eric Lindgren, and he also experienced some things there too. one of his most memorable experiences was he brought a rocking chair, one of his own, to that house. But I guess he wanted to make sure that he was as comfortable as possible within the home. But this desire didn't last too long, because he stated that every single time he sat in that chair, it didn't last long for something, some invisible force, to throw him right out of that chair. So crazy stuff. I mean, if that happens to me, you better believe I'm not staying there any longer. But who knows? That this guy, it seemed to be like he continued to try to do so. Now, it's sometime between then in the 1940s up until now, it was turned into a bed and breakfast, if you can believe it. I don't know exactly the year when this occurred, but it's to this day like it's an actual bed and breakfast. But in the early 80s, so the early 1980s at least, there was a priest of some sort who was brought forth. Now the interesting thing was he was considered an outsider priest, so maybe he was someone that wasn't necessarily tied to a church or was previously with a church. Maybe he was a rogue priest, somebody doing his services for money. I don't know. But he was the name of Tor Forsland, and he was brought forth because he was known to perform exorcisms, and he had promised the town there that he would get rid of anything, whatever these things were, these apparitions within the home. By the way, there was also reported sightings there too of shadow people, if you wanted to mix in other type of apparitions there. So he did so, and the way I read it, it seemed like he kept this up for the year. I don't know if he was staying there or if he was visiting through all this time, but no matter how much he performed these exorcisms, nothing was working. It seemed to have little to no effect to these things, whatever they were there. So he left, and the hauntings continue to this day. But yes, absolutely, if you wanted to stay there, you can actually book this hotel if you're going there to Sweden. And it's again, I mentioned earlier, the current owners at least, either they hallmark these hauntings, they make sure that they get the word out within the ghost community, because it's having some success, even as a remote location there as the Borgvattnet in Sweden. I mean, people are staying there. Maybe there might even be people staying there by accident, not realizing that this is a haunted location. Maybe they think, again, young couples honeymoon, that this is a perfect location for it, not realizing what they're getting into. But the owners there today, if you can stay at least one night, making through the night itself, you will receive what's called a diploma, actually marking the honor of you being able to stay the entire night. That's how haunted this thing is. The owners themselves will promise to give you a certificate or a diploma acknowledging your braveness of being able to stay that night. So crazy stuff. Would you do that? Would you actually do so if you're there near that area? I don't know. I would have to think on that, because I would love to just visit these places. There's that place, again, the Grove there in Jefferson City, where I'm going to go visit it sometime soon, but I would not necessarily want to stay the whole night, but who knows. But anyways, that's all the information about this haunted vicarage there in Borgvattnet, Sweden. If anyone has stayed there or knows someone who has stayed there, if anyone knows more history related to it, there's bound to be someone, friend of a friend type stuff, or family of a family member that knows more information about it, has heard more stories. That would be really good to hear too. But yes, this is absolutely the most haunted location there in Sweden. Looks picture perfect from the outside and the inside, but decades and decades of really scary stuff prove otherwise on in terms of its history. And it's a place that you can actively stay there for the night if you wanted to. So alright, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.